Hi guys. Tonight we are standing right at the edge of daylight, watching it thin and fade, as if someone is slowly turning down a dimmer switch on the world itself. You are still outside, and the last warmth of the sun lingers weakly on your skin, but you can already feel it slipping away. The sky doesn't go dark all at once, it hesitates. Blue deepens into gray, gray into something heavier, and then, almost without ceremony, night settles in. No bulbs flicker on, no streetlights hum to life. Darkness simply arrives, full and final. You probably won't survive this, at least not comfortably, because once the sun disappears in the Middle Ages, it takes with it far more than light. It steals time, safety, productivity, and certainty. Night is not a pause button. It is a condition you must endure. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights and let yourself step fully into this world where night is not decorative or cozy, but absolute. You begin to understand quickly that medieval evenings are short by design. People move faster now, footsteps pick up, voices sharpen with urgency. Animals are herded closer, doors are checked twice. This isn't panic, it's routine. A mainstream historical reality is that most medieval people structured their entire day around available daylight, not clocks. Work stretched and shrank with the seasons, but nightfall was always non-negotiable. You feel it in your body before you fully register it in your mind. Sight weakens first, colors flatten, faces blur, peripheral vision becomes unreliable. You realize how much modern life depends on light without ever asking permission. Here, light is a resource, not a guarantee. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks, then goes quiet. Chickens have already settled, their murmuring replaced by an odd stillness. The air itself seems to thicken. Historians still argue whether medieval people feared darkness itself or simply respected it as a force that demanded caution rather than courage. Standing here now, you suspect it's both. As the last usable light drains from the sky, the world narrows. Your vision drops to what's directly in front of you, your feet, the ground, the shape of a doorway. Beyond that is guesswork. The stars, when they appear, offer beauty but very little help. Moonlight, when you're lucky enough to have it, turns everything silver and deceptive, creating shadows that move when nothing else does. You head indoors because everyone does. Medieval nightlife is overwhelmingly indoor life. Houses are not built for comfort so much as survival. Thick walls, small openings, low ceilings. These choices weren't aesthetic, they were defensive against cold, against wind, against the darkness itself. A quirky but well-documented tidbit is that many medieval windows were intentionally narrow slits, not just for defense against attack, but to minimize heat loss and control smoke movement once fires were lit. Inside, the transition is jarring. Outdoors was dim, indoors is something else entirely. Without fire, the interior is a pocket of near total blackness. Your eyes strain, searching for edges, for shapes, for reassurance that the room still exists. You shuffle carefully, guided more by memory than sight. Then fire appears, a spark, a hiss, a low crackle. Suddenly, the room exists again, but only partially. Fire does not illuminate evenly. It creates islands of visibility surrounded by shadow. Faces glow and then vanish as people shift. Walls flicker in and out of existence. The ceiling disappears altogether, swallowed by darkness and smoke. Fire becomes the anchor of the evening. It is light, warmth, protection, and risk compressed into one trembling source. This is another mainstream fact. Open hearths were central to medieval domestic life, especially at night.
But what textbooks rarely convey is how mentally exhausting it is to rely on a single flame for so many needs at once. You feel your shoulders drop slightly as warmth reaches you, the day's tension loosens. Yet at the same time, you can't stop watching the fire. Everyone watches it. Sparks jump, embers shift. A single mistake could turn this refuge into a death trap. Fire gives, but it also threatens. As people settle around the hearth, conversation softens. Night changes voices. There's less shouting now, more murmuring. Words are chosen carefully because they don't travel far in low light. Silence stretches longer between sentences. The rhythm slows. You notice something else too, the smell. Smoke clings to everything, hair, clothes, skin. It seeps into bedding and wood and memory. This is not the clean scent of a modern fireplace. It's damp wood, old ash, animal fat, and whatever else was burned that day. A fringe historical detail that often surprises people is that many medieval households sometimes burned dried animal dung when wood was scarce, especially in treeless regions. The smell is unforgettable. Time behaves differently now without artificial light. Evening is not something to fill endlessly. There are no distractions waiting to be turned on. You don't scroll, you don't binge, you simply exist until tiredness claims you. Historians still debate whether medieval people experienced time as slower, or whether our modern acceleration simply makes the past feel sluggish by comparison. Sitting here watching flames pulse and shrink, you feel time thicken, almost syrup-like. Outside, darkness presses against the walls. You are keenly aware of what you cannot see: forest edges, empty roads, the possibility of strangers or animals, or nothing at all. Sometimes the absence itself is the most unsettling part. You listen. Night sharpens hearing. Every creak of wood sounds intentional. Every gust of wind feels like a presence. Medieval night is loud in small ways. Mice, rafters settling, a cough from across the room. Somewhere far off, a bell marks a prayer hour you don't quite understand yet. There's no clear boundary between evening and night. One slides into the other gently, almost politely. Eventually, someone yawns. Another shifts closer to the fire. The flame is adjusted, lowered, coaxed to last just a bit longer. Candles, if they exist here at all, are not lit casually. They are saved, used sparingly. Light is money, and money burns fast. As your body begins to relax, you realize something quietly unsettling. Once you lie down, once the fire dims, once the room goes dark again, there will be no escape from night until morning. No switch, no override, just darkness, patience, and whatever thoughts decide to surface when there is nothing left to look at. And so, without announcement, medieval night truly begins.
Darkness deepens fully now, and with it comes a noticeable change in sound. During the day, noise spills freely. Tools strike wood and stone. Voices carry across fields. Animals announce themselves constantly. At night, all of that contracts. Sound no longer spreads outward, it sinks inward. You become aware not of what is loud, but of what is missing. The village exhales. That is the best way to describe it. Doors close, shutters are pulled tight. The last conversations taper off into murmurs. What remains is not silence exactly, but a careful quiet. You hear wind moving through uneven roof thatch. You hear the distant cough of someone who did not quite beat the cold. You hear your own breathing more clearly than you would like. A well-established historical fact is that medieval communities actively discouraged noise after nightfall, not out of courtesy, but necessity. Sound attracted attention. Attention invited trouble. Without light, you cannot easily tell whether a noise is harmless or dangerous, so the safest rule is to create as little noise as possible yourself. Quiet becomes a form of protection. You feel this discipline settling into your posture. Movements grow deliberate. Footsteps are placed carefully. Even the fire is treated with respect, coaxed rather than fed aggressively. Flames snap too loudly when they are overworked. Outside, the night does not feel empty, it feels occupied. The darkness seems to listen. You realize that much of medieval fear of night was not fear of monsters, but fear of not knowing who or what was nearby. Roads after dark belonged to uncertainty. A single traveler could be a pilgrim, a messenger, a thief, or something worse. Historians still argue whether crime truly increased at night in medieval settlements, or whether people simply perceived it as more dangerous because of reduced visibility. Sitting here, you suspect perception alone would be enough. Animals behave differently now. Dogs curl closer to doorways. Livestock shift and snort in their enclosures. Rats become bolder. You hear the faint scratch of movement behind walls and beneath floors. A fringe but widely noted detail is that medieval homes were never truly sealed. Gaps were inevitable. Nighttime belonged to creatures small enough to exploit them. The air cools quickly once the fire is reduced. Heat does not linger the way it does in modern buildings. Stone and earth absorb warmth slowly and release it just as slowly. But wood gives up heat almost immediately. You wrap yourself tighter, noticing how cold sneaks in through ankles and wrists first. Conversation, when it happens, changes tone. People speak in shorter phrases. Stories are told more softly, often repeated ones. Familiar words are comforting in the dark. There is less appetite for novelty. Now, night is not the time for surprises. You notice how faces look different by firelight. Features stretch and compress. Eyes reflect flame and appear brighter than they are. Shadows exaggerate expressions. Someone who looked ordinary by day seems suddenly severe. Another seems kinder. Fire reshapes people as much as it reshapes rooms. This is where superstition finds fertile ground. Shapes shift. Sounds lack clear sources. It becomes easy to imagine intention where there is none. Medieval folklore thrived in these hours, not because people were foolish, but because their sensory information was incomplete. When you cannot see clearly, the mind fills gaps aggressively. There is a scholarly debate about whether medieval people truly believed in every spirit and omen recorded in folklore, or whether such stories functioned more as explanations for anxiety and danger. In this half-light, belief feels less like a choice and more like a natural response to uncertainty. You hear a bell in the distance, not loud, but steady. It marks a religious hour. Time at night is measured differently. Without clocks, without light, the community relies on sound. Bells divide darkness into manageable segments. They reassure you that the world is still structured, still watched. Someone near you murmurs a prayer quietly enough that it blends with the crackle of embers. Religion does not sleep simply because people do. Night is full of obligations, spiritual if not physical. Eventually, even conversation fades, not abruptly, it thins. A pause stretches too long. No one rushes to fill it. Silence becomes acceptable, even welcome. You realize how tiring darkness can be. Your eyes ache from trying to see. Your body feels heavier. This is not boredom, it is a different rhythm asserting itself. The fire is allowed to sink lower. Flames shrink into glowing coals. Light pulls inward, collapsing toward the hearth. Corners vanish. The room simplifies into warmth at the center and darkness everywhere else. You understand now that medieval night is not dramatic. It does not roar or threaten openly. It presses gently but relentlessly. It asks you to slow down, to listen more than you speak, to accept that not everything can be seen or solved until morning. And so you remain still, wrapped in quiet, letting the darkness finish what sunset began. As the night settles deeper, you become aware of how deliberately these homes are shaped for darkness. Medieval homes do not fight the night, they accept it, accommodate it, and in many ways cooperate with it. You stand inside a space that was never meant to be bright after sunset. It was meant to be contained. The walls around you are thick,
sometimes shockingly so. Stone, packed earth, heavy timber. These materials serve one primary purpose at night, and it is not comfort. They slow loss. Heat leaks out reluctantly. Cold pushes in just as slowly. This way of building was common across much of medieval Europe. Regardless of wealth, even modest homes followed the same logic, just with cruder materials. Windows, if the house has them at all, are small and awkwardly placed. They sit high or narrow, more suggestion than opening. During the day, they admit just enough light to work by. At night, they do almost nothing. Glass is rare and expensive. Oiled cloth or animal horn might cover the opening, blurring the outside world into a dull haze even before darkness arrives. When night comes, the window stops being a feature and becomes a liability, a place where cold and sound might slip through. You notice how low the ceiling feels. Smoke stains darken the beams above your head. The roof presses downward, not physically but psychologically. This is not a space designed for wandering or pacing. It encourages stillness, sitting, lying down, conserving energy. There is an odd intimacy to it. Darkness shrinks space. Rooms that feel adequate by day feel crowded by night. People sit closer, not only for warmth, but because there is nowhere else to go. The edges of the room have vanished. Only the center remains. One thing records from the period suggest clearly is that medieval interiors were rarely quiet in a modern sense. Even at night, houses creaked, settled, breathed. Wood contracts as temperatures drop. Thatch rustles softly above. Somewhere moisture drips. You cannot escape the sound of the building itself. It is alive around you. Less often mentioned is how flexible these spaces were. A single room might serve as kitchen, workshop, sleeping area, and storage. At night, all of those functions collapse into one shared purpose: shelter. Tools are pushed aside, food is secured, bedding is laid out wherever there is space near warmth. The house transforms, not by moving walls, but by shifting priorities. You feel the floor beneath you, dirt in poorer homes, rough planks in wealthier ones. Cold rises upward relentlessly. Straw rushes or simple mats attempt to interrupt that cold, but only partially. This is why benches, stools, and beds are lifted off the ground whenever possible. Elevation matters. Even a small distance from the floor can mean the difference between tolerable cold and bone-deep chill. There is a curious detail that appears again and again in household accounts. People slept with their clothes on far more often than modern imagination allows. Not because they lacked privacy or modesty, but because undressing wasted warmth. Layers stayed on. Cloaks doubled as blankets. Hoods were pulled tight even in bed. The idea of pajamas would have felt absurd here. Firelight reveals how walls are used. Hooks hold tools. Shelves carry everyday objects. Nothing is decorative. Everything must justify its presence. At night, unnecessary items become obstacles, things you might trip over or knock into flame. Order is not about neatness, it is about survival. You reach out and touch the wall. It is cool. Even near the hearth, stone absorbs heat slowly and releases it grudgingly. By morning, it will still be cold. Medieval builders understood this trade-off well. Thick walls protect against extremes, but they never truly feel warm. There is disagreement among modern historians about whether people perceived these homes as oppressive or comforting. Some argue that familiarity softened the darkness, that people felt safer enclosed by heavy walls. Others suggest that constant shadow and smoke created low-level stress that never fully lifted. Sitting here now, you feel both reactions at once. The house protects you from the outside, but it also traps you with your thoughts. Smell becomes more noticeable the longer.
Fire becomes the quiet center of everything now. Not dramatically, not with ceremony, but through simple necessity. As the room darkens and edges disappear, your attention is drawn again and again to the hearth. It is no longer just a feature of the house. It is the house, at least for the hours that matter. You sit close enough to feel its warmth on your shins. Too close and it stings. Too far and the cold creeps back immediately. There's a narrow zone where comfort exists, and everyone learns to recognize it instinctively. Positions around the fire are adjusted constantly. A foot inches forward, a shoulder turns away. Heat is uneven and unpredictable, and you adapt without thinking. What is clear from surviving household records is that fire structured medieval evenings more than any written schedule ever could. When the fire was strong, people stayed awake. When it weakened, bodies began to surrender to sleep. Flame controlled time. The fire itself is never left unattended. Someone always watches it, even if only half-consciously. Eyes drift toward it again and again. Embers are nudged. A log is repositioned. Sparks are discouraged. Fire gives life, but it also demands supervision. One careless moment could mean disaster, especially in homes packed tightly together. There's an odd intimacy in this shared vigilance. Everyone depends on the same flame. Children are warned away from it. Older hands kend it. Knowledge passes quietly, learned through repetition rather than instruction. You do not need to be told how dangerous fire is. You can feel it. Smoke curls upward, slow and persistent. It does not rise cleanly. It hesitates, spreads, then finds its way out through a hole in the roof or a crude chimney if one exists. Many homes do not have proper chimneys at all. Smoke simply fills the upper space of the room before escaping gradually. Eyes water, throats itch. This discomfort is so normal that it barely registers. A lesser-known detail emerges from medical writings of the time. Chronic smoke exposure was so common that it shaped medieval health in subtle ways. Persistent coughs, irritated eyes, and shortened breath were accepted parts of life, not ailments to be solved. Nights with their longer hours by the fire made these effects more noticeable. The firelight plays tricks. Faces glow amber, then fade. Hands seem larger, then smaller. Shadows stretch and collapse as flames shift. You understand how stories grow in this environment. The fire animates everything. A still object appears to move. A moving object seems alive. There is disagreement among historians about how much storytelling actually happened around the hearth on ordinary nights. Some argue that evenings were filled with tales, songs, and shared memory. Others suggest fatigue limited conversation more than imagination. Sitting here, you sense that both are true, depending on the night, the season, and the people present. Tonight feels quieter. The day has taken its toll. Words come slowly. Someone begins a familiar story, then abandons it halfway through. No one presses them to continue. Silence settles again, punctuated by the gentle pop of burning wood. Fire also dictates smell. Resin from logs, old ash, grease from cooking earlier in the day. These scents layer one over another and sink into fabric and hair. They are not unpleasant, just constant. Even sleep will not fully escape them. You notice how tools gather near the hearth at night. Pots are stacked closer. Water is kept within reach. Anything needed quickly is placed where light exists. The rest of the room becomes irrelevant. Darkness claims it entirely. There's a quiet calculation happening now. How long should the fire last? Too much fuel, and it burns wastefully. Too little, and the room will grow unbearable before morning. Fuel is precious. Wood must be gathered, cut, and carried. Each log represents labor already spent. In some regions, especially where forests are scarce, people burn alternatives, peat, dried grasses, even animal dung. These fuels burn differently, producing different heat and smoke. You feel the difference immediately.
Some give steady warmth, others smolder and fill the room with sharp, lingering scent. Choices made earlier in the day shape comfort now. There is no single agreement among scholars about how warm medieval homes actually were at night. Some suggest they were surprisingly tolerable when managed carefully. Others argue that constant cold stress was unavoidable. Your own experience suggests a compromise. Warmth exists, but only in small pockets and only for limited time. As the fire settles into glowing coals, its character changes. Light softens, heat becomes less aggressive. This is the moment when bodies relax most. Muscles unclench, breathing deepens. The fire no longer demands attention, it invites rest. Someone stirs the embers gently, just enough to keep them alive. Flames flicker briefly, then retreat again. This small act feels ceremonial, even though it is entirely practical. It marks the transition from evening into true night. The fire will not last until dawn. Everyone knows this. Its job is not to banish night, only to ease into it. Eventually, darkness will reclaim the room fully, and you will lie down with whatever warmth remains trapped in your clothes and blankets. For now, though, you sit close to the fading glow, letting it hold the night at bay just a little longer.